Hey there, welcome to the stream. My name is Mehdi. If you're watching my stream for the first time or watching a broadcast, today we're going to be doing some live coding. I'm a software engineer and I will be on Twitch streaming myself coding, solving programming puzzles, building applications and projects, and just kind of doing it with your help and working my way through it. So hopefully this gives you some insight into what it's like to look at a problem and try to solve it, figure out solutions, kind of butt your head against the wall a little bit and get through the challenging parts. Today we're going to be focusing on a programming challenge from the Advent of Code. If you're not familiar with Advent of Code, it is an advent calendar where every day is comprised of, two separate programming challenges. It's a step 1 and 2. And it's basically a puzzle that you have to solve and get some kind of solution, input it into the website, and you get a shiny gold star. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. All right, so we're here on the Advent of Code website. If you've not used this website before or done these challenges before, and you're trying to get into programming or you're looking for something fun to do, I would highly recommend checking it out. You can check it out at adventofcode.com, and it's a great way to get started. Even if you're not an experienced programmer, especially starting out, some of the challenges they get progressively harder, and they're a great way to get introduced to coding. So as you can see, we've done challenges 1, 2, and 3. I've actually streamed these first 2 before, so you can probably watch those in my past broadcasts. I didn't get a chance to stream number 3, but I did solve it. I'm not going to go over it today, but if you're interested in going back and taking a look at that, you can do so on my GitHub. So if you can see it at the bottom of your screen right there, but also if you just go to github.com/mvasai, it should be pinned to the front of my GitHub profile. And it's a repository called Advent of Code 2020, day 3. If you're interested in the solution, it's right here in the source folder under main.rs, and it's got both parts 1 and 2. So I'm not going to go over that, but it was a fun challenge, and I'm just going to move forward and try to do part 4. Now I have not too much time this morning, so I'm going to try to get part 1 done, and depending on what part 2 looks like, I might pause and then come back to this later today. So if you're interested in watching a stream later in the afternoon, I might be coming back for part 2 depending on how long this takes me. Also, full disclosure, I'm learning the Rust programming language while I do these problems. So I'm totally a newbie to Rust. I'm learning the syntax as we go and the idioms. So it's not really my comfort zone. So you're going to see me struggle quite a bit. And that's part of it, right? That's part of learning, both learning programming, but also learning a programming language that does things slightly differently than what you're used to, or gives you some behavior that maybe you didn't expect. So I think that's a good way to kind of get familiar with a new programming language by just kind of encountering problems, seeing what the compiler is telling you, and then solving for them. So let's make sure, first of all, that we've got our repository here. And I'm just going to create a new Cargo project. Cargo is the kind of CLI that manages projects for you in Rust. So I'm going to say Cargo new, day 4. So now you see we've got our day 4 folder. I'm going to just drill into it and just open our main file. So this is where all of our code will live. Typically, most of these challenges also have some input data that you have to work against. So I'm going to probably be grabbing that and putting it into a text file or something that I can read and use in the code. All right. Take a sip of water here. Now, let's go ahead and look at the problem. So full disclosure, I looked at this last night before I went to sleep. So I kind of have an idea of what it's going to be like, but let's go over it together. So there's a story. You arrive at the airport only to realize that you grabbed your North Pole credentials instead of your passport. While these documents are extremely similar, North Pole credentials aren't issued by a country, and therefore aren't actually valid documentation for travel in most of the world. It seems like you're not the only one having the problem, though. A very long line is formed. Due to some questionable network security, though, and due to just us being hackers, we can solve both of these problems at the same time by basically thwarting airport security, which is always Always a good thing to do, right? Anyway, so it looks like the passport scanners are having trouble detecting which passports have all the required fields. This is a list of fields. So we got like birth year, issue year, expiration year, height, hair color, eye color, passport ID, and country ID. Excuse me, let me make this a little bit larger. So passport data is validated in batch files, which is our puzzle input, excuse me. Each passport is represented as a sequence of key value pairs separated by spaces or new lines. Passports are separated by blank lines. So this is a little bit different than what we're used to, where they're kind of throwing a wrench at us, which is kind of like, I don't actually really understand why, because it's not really like a programming like logical challenge to figure out how to split by like double new line or whatever. But anyway, here's an example batch file containing 4 passports. So you can see each of these separated by a blank line is a separate passport. And they've got some key value pairs, meaning you've got a key, the name of the field, in this case, issue year or eye color. And then we've got a value on the right side of the colon, which I guess this would be amber. This would be 2013, obviously. So the first passport is valid because it's got all 8. The second passport is invalid. It is missing height. So there's no height here. It's got 7, but it's missing height. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The third passport is interesting. The only missing field is CID, which is the country ID, right? And as you remember, it's the North Pole credentials that don't have a country ID. You're kind of this like countryless person. And not all passports, or not a passport at all, surely nobody would mind if you made the system temporarily ignore missing CID fields. Treat this passport as valid, okay? The fourth passport is missing 2 fields, CID and BYR. Missing CID is fine, but missing any other field is not, so the passport is invalid. Okay, so based on this, 2 of these would be valid. Count the number of valid passports, those that have all the required fields. And I mean, if we just look at the rules here, this is fairly straightforward, at least for part 1. And essentially, right, like what we're looking at is we've got some number of fields. It's going to be variable. Some of them are going to have more fields, some of them are going to have fewer fields. And there are 8 total fields. 1 of them is optional. And if you look at the puzzle input, you can see they're separated by blank lines. So a really simple, I'm kind of hesitant to do it in the simplest way because I've been bitten by Advent of Code last year in the past, where you think a problem is going to be simple and you do it like the simplest way possible, and then the subsequent parts or even the subsequent days expect you to have done some like really clean modular code that you can build on. But whatever, I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's just a good principle, I think, is to just keep it simple. So I'm going to try to do it the simplest way, which is there are 8 total fields and 1 of them is optional. So any of these passports, if they have 8 fields or they have 7 fields and no CID, should be valid, right? Meaning if you've got 8, we know you've got all of them, it's a passport. If you've got 7, we have to make sure that the one that's missing is CID and not like one of the other ones that's required, because that's the only one that's optional. You could totally do it like kind of a more, I suppose, comprehensive way where you build this like wonderful data structure and you know, have like these optional fields and have validators. And I don't know if we're going to do that. Let's kind of get into the code and figure out like how we're going to tackle it, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. Anyway, I won't bore you with all the details. Let's get into the actual coding. So I'm going to create a data.txt file in my day 4 folder right here. Wonderful. And then one thing I did yesterday was I used the buff reader type to basically create a reader over my input file. This was actually awesome for yesterday's thing, which was that it would basically allow me to have an iterator that I could call, well, I could call .lines on this, and that would give me an iterator that would iterate over every line of the input, which was perfect for yesterday because the different parts of the input data were separated by a new line, meaning every new input was on a separate line. We don't quite have that today. We have kind of this weird thing. Now, one thing I would love to do if I wanted to spend the time on it would be to write a custom iterator over this. That would basically, each iteration would yield one full passport with all the line breaks taken out and replaced by white spaces so that it's on one line. That would make it simpler for us to like split the thing and rearrange it and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if we're going to write a custom iterator, but we're just going to kind of write the code in a very imperative way, at least at first, and then maybe we can refactor. Maybe we'll need to because of the part 2. So let's first worry about getting our input data. And also, instead of using a buffer reader, I'm probably just going to read the entire thing into memory. It's not something I would want to do on the job, but because I don't really care about memory consumption, I'm just trying to get a gold star. I'm just going to do that right now. So I'm going to make a function called get input data. I know we've got this read to string method on the file system namespace. So I'm just going to bring in file system. And I can get our input data like I did, I think, in day 2 by using fs : read to string. So I'm going to do that. I noticed my syntax highlighting isn't working. This is something I figured out is an issue with the Rust Analyzer extension. It's a really wonderful VS Code extension, but one thing that does happen is that oftentimes when you load the editor, it fails to do your syntax highlighting in IntelliSense. So you need to kind of reload your window. If anyone has a solution to that, please let me know. So, and then now we need a path, which is going to be data.txt, and this file is in the root of our project. And this is returning a result type, and I'm just gonna unwrap this. I want to check one thing. So if I use expect, which is on result and option types, expect, does that handle error? Does that like break on error? But also, if there is no error, if we actually get the result type, does it just return that? So like I should be just using option expect and say like, hey, this is something went wrong here, but and expect. I mean, okay, this is a lot of code. Let me just try it out. Okay, so I need an error message, failed to read file. Great. So this does kind of what I expected, which is that if you call .expect on a result type, or I suppose an option type, you would get the this entire thing would evaluate to the string that I want. But in the case that there's an error, I would get like a nice error message that says failed to read file. This is, I guess, more idiomatic. I understand like a lot of what I was doing in previous streams was purposely ignoring the error handling part of Rust, which is actually one of the best parts of Rust, because like in the interest of just solving things quickly, but I want to do it the right way also. So I'm going to do it from like this from now on when possible. So now we have a string, which is raw data. Now, I am going to split this raw data by double new line. And what this is going to do, hopefully, is give me an iterator that for each iteration yields a full multi-line passport. So first, let me just make sure that this is what I expect it to be. I don't know if I have to do this, but we'll find out. And I'm just going to call this right here. And cargo run. So this does not help me. So maybe what I should really do is for raw pass in raw passports. Or rather, do this and not loop. And I just want to get one. And I need to unwrap this to be able to do this. You know, I just said cannot borrow raw passports is mutable. Whoops. Iteration requires mutability here because the state of the iterator is changing. Now, so this is great. You can see we had a raw passport printed here, which is exactly what we wanted. Basically, we want every time we call .next or every time we iterate over this iterator in a for loop, we should get all of our raw data, and that's that, right? So, and what I also want to do is map each string to replaces all matches of a pattern with another string. I'm going to replace all white spaces with, I'm sorry, all new lines with just a white space. The reason I do that is because now if I do print line now if I do this, you can see we have all of our data on one line. Now it's super easy to just split this into you know, by white space, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Not skip, but split. Oh, I don't know actually if I can do that. Oh, well, this is the iterator, right? So I would have to do map string s split space. Wonderful. And format this. And so now I'm going to have an iterator where each passport is split into is split by white space. So basically each of these bits of data, we're going to have like a key colon value. Great. What's this complaining about here? Maybe I need to do returns a value referencing data owned by S is borrowed here. Okay, so S to owned. Now, why can I not do this? Cannot return value referencing temporary value. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. I'm just going to go ahead and return this. And then this is going to tell me that I need to return the correct type. Which is this. But I'm not sure if this is actually, well, expected one of, no. You know, I'm just gonna do this. All right, variable does not need to be mutable. Wonderful, let's do that. Great, so just based on my lack of understanding of what was going on, I kind of did things a little bit in an easier way, which was to just collect this whole thing and return a vector, which is basically, if you're familiar with JavaScript, like me, it's kind of like an array in JavaScript. And Rust has arrays as well, but they're of fixed length, unlike JavaScript arrays, which are kind of like this dynamically allocated, like ever-growing collection item or collection type. So this is going to give us our input data as a vector of strings, which is good enough. Now I'm going to write a function part one. Now part one, input data. Let's get our input data first, and let's look at again what we're trying to do in the data, right? So we're going to have something. We grab this example right here. I'm going to make a comment and grab this here, grab this here. So we're going to effectively just iterate over the input data. Each item will look something like this. So we're going to have a big string. I don't know why I'm getting this. Can I just ignore? Prefix it with an underscore. Okay. I don't know why it's giving me errors on my comments, but let's just ignore that for now. So each of these is going to look something like this, which is we're going to have a string basically, which is delimited by white spaces. That's going to be comprised of different key value pairs. So I'm going to now iterate over this string. Iterate over this vector. So I'm going to say for passport candidate of input data iter. Actually, I'm sorry, for in. Again, that's another JavaScript thing. So it's going to create an iterator from this collect, from this vector, which is kind of, I realize we're going to vector and then back to iterator. We could just, could probably just return this. I was just having, I guess, I don't know if I could just return iterator type, but we'll try that later. And then here we're going to see if the passport is valid. So maybe we should write a is valid. Function is valid. And then this is going to get a reference to, well, it should get a string. Now this is going to need to split the string, look at each of the key value pairs, count them, and if the count is 8, or if the count is 7 and the list of keys does not contain CID, we are golden. So let's have a valid count equals 0. This needs to be mutable. The Rust makes you you have to opt into mutability. And if passport, or I'm sorry, if is valid passport candidate, then we're going to say valid count plus equals 1, and then return valid count. We could also do a filter and count, but maybe we will do that later. So expected, so this is going to return a Boolean. And then passport candidate, we need to pass, I'm not sure actually if we need to pass, I guess we can just pass a reference. And this doesn't return a bool, so for now I'm going to say false. And this doesn't return an integer, so I'm going to say sure. Whatever. So this is an unsigned 16-bit integer. I don't know if I think that's probably good. So let's do this. Let's write our validation function. So we're going to get a reference to a string. What we need to do is say let parts equal candidate to owned split by space. And this is going to give us a split string. And now this split string, so like if we do parts.count, can we do that? Yes, we can. Wonderful. So we can say let num keys, and we're going to say equal parts.count. What this is actually going to do, what count does is it iterates over the entire iterator and literally counts like how many, like, so it's like O of n time complexity. It iterates over the iterator and counts the number of entries, but for us, like this is going to be 5 entries or whatever. So, or up to 8. So I'm going to say mutable here so we can do that. Is that what it's complaining about? Consider using a let binding. Okay, so let owned string equals candidate. Now this is an error I've seen pop up a lot where like I guess values are being dropped if I'm just chaining methods. So the compiler tells me to use a let, like use a separate binding to kind of hold that. I don't understand why, but I'm just listening to it. And that's kind of wonderful because I don't have to know anything about what that means to actually write some code that works. However, I do need to learn this eventually. So I probably will at some point and share it out with you. But for now, I'm just gonna trust the compiler. The compiler in Rust is really, really good at kind of telling you what to do and helping you be the best version of yourself. So right off the bat, if num keys is 8, return true. Great. If num keys is 7, and can I do a string contains? Let's see, owned string contains, awesome, CID colon, return true, then return false. So let's look at this logically. We're splitting our string, so we don't even need to, really the only reason we actually split this right now, I'm anticipating more in part 2, but the only reason we split this right now is to get a count of key value pairs by kind of making this this split type, which is delimited by these spaces. And numkeys is just going to walk that list and give us a count. We probably don't need to do this. Honestly, like this entire challenge would have been so much easier with regular expressions, but I'm trying not to bring an external crate here, or just, trying to learn some more about Rust rather than just rely on like a meta language that isn't Rust. So I'm going to go ahead and just rely on this. If numkeys is 8, return true. If numkeys is 7, and own string does not contain. So can I just bang this? There we go. Then return true. So 7, and it doesn't contain the optional one. And then this should just work. Now let's go ahead and print our answer. Can't see right here. Print line, let's see, part 1 then part 1. Let's run it with cargo, see what we get. 208. Great. Now let's go over to our browser, and I'm going to see if this is the correct answer. Yay, wonderful. So this was right. And we get a gold star. Let's quickly look at, I want to get off before 9 o'clock Eastern, but I want to see if number 2 is something we can solve in that time. So the first half is complete. It provides 1 gold star. Cool. So the line is moving more quickly now after we breached airport security during the holidays, which is like the busiest time of the year. But let's ignore that we just did that. You overhear airport security talking about how passports with invalid data are getting through. Better add some data validation quick. Okay, so you can continue to ignore the CID field, but each other field has strict rules about what values are valid for automatic validation. Awesome. This is kind of what I expected. There's not too much more code, I don't think, but let's look at what we're doing, right? So each other field has strict rules about what other values or what values are valid for automatic validation. So birth year has to be 4 digits, at least 1920 and at most 2002. Issue year has to be 4 digits, at least 2010 and at most 2020. Expiration year has to be 4 digits, at least 2020 and at most 2030. Height is going to be a number followed by either cm or in, so for centimeters and inches. And if cm, the number must be at least 150 and at most 193. If in, the number must be at least 59 and at most 76. So hair color, we're going to look at pound sign followed by exactly 6 characters, 0 to 9 or A to F. Eye color, exactly one of amb, blue, brown, gray, green, hazel, or other. Passport ID being a 9-digit number, including leading zeros. And country ID, we can ignore it. So we need to count okay, let's see. Your job is to count the number of passports where all the required fields are both present and valid according to the above rules. Here are some example values. And this is going to give us some values for valid passports. Eye color and invalid passports, right, or values. So brown is valid as an eye color, but white is not. And then here are some examples of invalid passports, and here's some valid passports. If you were writing tests, and I probably should be at this point, you would use these for to test against. So I give up. I'm going to use regular expressions, because doing this without regular expressions to me is kind of not very intuitive, because you're basically reinventing regular expressions. You would need to do some kind of pattern matching against text, which is exactly what regular expressions are perfect for. And if you're not familiar with regular expressions, that's completely okay. They're kind of like write once and never read again. And there are plenty of tools out there that help you write regex. I've actually been writing quite a bit of regex recently, so I'm a little bit comfortable with it. But in Rust, regular expressions, or the regex library or package or crate as they're called in Rust world, the crate isn't a part of the standard library. It's an external crate that we actually have to install. So this is going to be our first like cargo usage that isn't just running our project. I'm going to try to do this. If I don't get this done in the next 15 minutes or so, we're probably going to call it a day and come back to it in the afternoon. So usage, right? This crate is on crates.io and can be used by adding regex to your dependencies in your project's cargo.toml. So you might have noticed every time I create a new project, I get this cargo.toml. Search marketplace for an extension. Which of these to get? I guess I'll do better toml. It has the most downloads. And let's see if this gives us some nice syntax highlighting. All right, so this is kind of, if you're coming from like JavaScript world, you might be thinking of like, this is just exactly like package.json. If you're coming from Python, you might be thinking this is like setup.py, and so on and so forth, right? If you're coming from PHP, this is like your composer config or whatever. So I'm going to add our regex1 version. Now, if I do cargo run, you see we see blocking, waiting for file lock on package cache, updating crates.io index, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's actually going and fetching our package that we defined in cargo.toml at compile time and making sure that that's available for us to use. So in order to use it, I'm not sure actually if I just need to, I think I just need to pull in the namespace. So if I just need to basically say use regex. So I'm going to do that. Great. And we get the documentation available to us. This is clearly something that's now in scope that we can use. Now, if we go back, like this looks scary because you're thinking, you know, holy moly, this is a lot of different rules. Like that's going to be a lot of if statements. That's kind of the beauty of regular expressions, is that you don't, you're defining patterns and you can just match against those patterns. Now for some of these, for example, for number followed by either CM or IN, and then if CM, the number must be at least 150 and at most 193, and if IN, the number must be at least 59 and at most 76. This is like, you can't, that's probably the most complicated part of this, and it's really not terribly complicated or complex, but essentially you're gonna have to parse out that value out of your regex and actually run like a validator based on if it's like CM or IN. And so this is the only part of this challenge, I think, that isn't just a single regular expression, and like if it's invalid, we just return false. So let's do that. Let's and also before we do that, actually, there is a wonderful website called regexer.com. I swear by this website anytime I write any form of regular expressions. Now, this is using the JavaScript regex engine, and there are some differences in syntax and like parts of regular expressions that are supported by different languages. But for the most part, the basics and the bread and butter stuff that you'd be doing in regular expressions are pretty standard. So then what we can do is go over here, grab an example passport or a list of passports, right? And put it here. This is our kind of raw text. Now we're gonna flip back and forth between this and, let's turn on dark mode just for better. Yep. We're gonna flip back and forth between this and our code editor to write regular expressions for each of our parts, I guess. So rather than just doing a pure count, I'm gonna do is comment this out. And I'm going to write a for loop. Nope. Okay, now this is going to give us an ampersand str, which is a slice, I learned. That's a kind of like a way to refer to this type and this string type are two very different things. Okay. Now in our loop, we need to parse out the two parts of our text. So what that means is before we do anything, we need to write a regular expression that gives us like the actual like key and value. So let's do that. Regular expressions all the way down. So this is going to be simple. Each key is 3 characters. So we can say, and they're all lowercase, so A to Z, right? And then 3. What this is going to do, it's going to match any piece of text, any substring that is containing, matches a character in this range. So anything from A to Z, and then exactly 3 times. Now what I'm going to do is put this in what's called a capture group. Whoops. Basically, I'm saying I don't want to just match this. I want you to pull it out and give it to me. And then I'm going to have a colon, and then I'm just going to have any character one or more times. So like if I were to write something like IYR colon, that's not going to match. But as soon as I add additional characters, or if I do like special characters, it's still going to match, right? Because some of these have like pound signs, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to say let parts regex equal regex new, and give it this pattern. So with Rust, what you have to do is anytime you use, and this is very true for like pretty much any language that implements regex, you compile a regex object, and now this object is now available to you, and every time you do anything, you would use this, you would like reuse this same regular expressions object. That's because these things are stateful, so they hold some state, they do some things, right? And you don't want to compile. This is actually like expensive. So in terms of computation time, depending on the regular expressions, can take like hundreds of milliseconds. So you don't want to be doing this inside of your loop. You don't want to compile a new regex every time you iterate over a part, because that's just wasteful. You don't really need it. So now let's see how we pull out capture groups. So this is, I'm kind of regurgitating exactly what's said here, which is to avoid compiling the same regex in a loop. Anyway, iterating over capture groups. So when it's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if we don't need to split this anymore, actually, because our regex, like just matching this, you can see, let's go back over here, right? We have, okay, so one kind of caveat here is that this is matching the entire line, right? We're matching even this space. So we need to not do that. And I believe the way the syntax is to do a caret and then oh, I'm sorry, not this. There we go. So so we're saying instead of just any character 0 or 1 or more times, so this plus means like match the previous quantifier, or match the previous token 1 or more times. What we're saying is match any character that's not a space 1 or more times. So this is actually going to give us all of the matches and presumably in Rust as an iterator. So we can just iterate over all of our matches instead of having to split by white space and then kind of like juggle all these different things. So so we can say, let's go over here, regex, right? So regex, we could just unwrap this and then text for cap in re.captures iter. So I wonder if we need to, I want to iterate over our matches. Oh, captures iter. Okay, so this is going to give us cap being like a tuple or an array of, yeah, this is an array of capture groups. So in this case, month, day, year, we did, okay, so they're kind of, I see what this is. Captures iter returns an iterator that iterates over matches and gives you cap, which is your capture groups. That's exactly what we want. So instead of this parts, I'm just going to say parts regex captures iter own string. Oh, And we can just do this. And now we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. Great. So let's format this. Didn't do anything. So now part is going to be captures. I believe the first capture is going to be the entire match. We actually don't care about the entire match. The second capture is going to be the key, and the third capture is going to be the value. So if we do like print line key value, and then we do part, maybe we should change this to caps. Oops, caps 1, caps 2, and then cargo run. Oh, okay. So we had a panic here. The thread main panic that no group had index 2. Wait, I wonder if this is then just 0 and 1. Yeah, okay. So, well, no. We forgot to update our regular expression here. Gotcha. Okay. So remember we had to accept that that space character, and we have to add an additional backslash here because we need to white space, or we need to double escape because we're inside of a string. So a single, if you're curious about what I just did, just Google double escaping or escaping strings. So cargo run, now we get, so now we actually do need to change our indices here. See, now key is the entire thing and value is just the key. So that's not what we want. We want to move 1 over. No group at index 2. Huh. I know what's going on. We are not putting this in a capture group. Great. So now for each of these, right, we need to basically check, hey, if I have this key, run this validation rule. We can do this in Rust with a, we don't need this line anymore, with a, well, let's say let key equal ampersand caps 1, let value equal ampersand caps 2, and then match key missing match arm. So now we could say what is one of our examples here. Let's go look at our, yeah. So VYR, so like the rule for birth year is that it needs to be 4 digits and at least 1920 and at most 2002. So let's go over here and say VYR, and then we can basically do like return true. I can't type. So match key, what does this tell me? I don't really know what that means, but I'm going to figure out later. Anyway, so so inside of each of these, right, this is like a pattern match. Inside of each of these, we can write the rule for whatever it is we're doing, right? So for example, in birth year, we need to check to see, first of all, like parse it as an integer, and then check to see if it's between the years that we expect. So let's equal value parse expect could not parse BYR. And now what is this going to tell me? Consider giving it a type. I'm going to give it a type of U16. And then we don't necessarily want to return anything if this is valid, because what we're doing is we're saying if we encounter any invalid value, we want to fail fast. Like we want to break out early and say, we don't want to do it anymore. So give me one moment. All right, back in business. Now, so we have this, and now we just need to just simply check, if BYR greater than, or if BYR is less than 1920 or greater than 2002, 1920, or BYR greater than 2002, return false. We don't want that, right? So now if birth year is actually like not in the range that we expect, we can just ignore it. So let's copy this down for issue year as well. So let's look at the rule for issue year. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to copy this whole thing, and can I do multi-line comments in Rust? Yes, I can. There we go. So now we just have it right there next to our code. So issue year is IYR. And then the expected values here, at least 2010 and at most 2020. Expiration year, very similar. So we're gonna look at expiration year at least 2020 and at most 2030. Right. Now height, there are a couple of more rules here. I'm gonna leave height until the last part. Hair color, we probably need a new regular expression for this. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna compile it once. I'm gonna say let hair regex or HCL regex new. Let's go over to regexer. So it's going to be basically be a hex code, right? So like if we're going back here, we have to say it's going to be a £sign followed by A to Z 0 through 9 exactly 6 times. So this is now going to match all the hex codes, right? Actually, it's not A to Z, it's A to F. Sorry, it's not a hex code. So hexadecimal right here. So now this is going to match all the valid hex codes. So if we have something that has a Z in it, we know it's not a real color. So let's put that here. Now let's define the pattern for HCL. If not HCL regex is a match. Let's see, how do you just do a simple match? What is the method that we would just call? Regex is match. We do need to unwrap it, or expect fail to compile HCL regex. is match value. So if it is not a match, return false. I'm going to grab this one and bring it down here so it's closer to our code. So we've got this, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this, and we need eye color. So that's exactly one of amber, blue, brown, gray, green, hazel, and other. So let's copy this down, go over here, actually go to ECL regex, and now we're going to basically say it's going to be one of these. I'm going to replace these with this. And it's going to have a caret and a $sign. And that's because we wanted to match the whole string. So see here we have caret $sign. I don't know what this raw string is. Do not process any. Oh, okay. So if we wanted to here, we can get rid of this and then go use a raw string, which doesn't require you to escape your backslashes, which is wonderful. Okay. So ECL regex, ECL. Now let's go ECL if ECL regex is match. If not a match, value turn false. I realize I could probably do this in a lot more of like a concise way, but this is more than good enough. And PID, that's our last one that we need to, well, that's our second to last one. So let's go ahead and do that. We need a 9-digit number, including leading zeros. So it's going to be digit 9. Right. And then I'm just going to, for the sake of making sure that this is correct, I'm going to add my caret and $sign. So \d is a digit character. This means that we're matching 9 exactly of the preceding qualifier. So we can go over here and say home. Let's copy this and call it PID. And then let's use a raw string. Great. And for PID, if not, PID regex is match value return false. Now CID we don't care about. However, we do need to make sure that our count is correct. So we need to, like before we were doing a iter, like we were just doing a count, which is fine, but we can just kind of do it all in one shot, like let mute count equals equals 1 or 0, sorry, and then I'm just going to say count plus equals 1. So this is going to give me a count of parts, and I'll use that later here when I say if count 8 or count, I don't need a triple equals, is 7 or counts is 7 and not, let's see, what is it? Candidate contains cid colon, then we return true. And if not, we return false. So now we're done with this as well. Now the last thing to do is the height. Before we do anything else, I kind of wonder if we are getting anything like an actual result or if we have any errors. So it says none of them are valid, which seems a little suspect, but it might just be that we're not validating completely. It might be that actually this is our default case and it's returning false. So that's actually fine. Now let's go ahead and do HGT, our last one. So we definitely need a regular expression for this as well. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to be a number followed by either CM or IN. So I'm going to go over here and say it's going to be a number in a capture group and plus, followed by CM IN. So, and it's not the beginning or end like this. So this is going to match these, right? And what we need to do is match it, pull the parts, and actually like make sure that if the capture groups, like make sure that we're basically, if it's IN, it's between like a certain set of values and so on and so forth. So like we need to check the range based on the unit. So let's bring this over here. Let's change our regex. Okay. And so now we have our height regex. Now we can match the value against the height regex. So if I don't want an iterator for if I just want to like, I guess I can just collect. So I could do something like captures iter text collect. So like if I could say like let HGT caps equal HGT regex captures read. What does captures read do? Let's look at some methods here. See all regex as items. Regex here. Captures read. But uses capture locations and amortized locations. Okay. Okay, I think we can just do captures and unwrap, and we have this like kind of get. Okay, awesome. So captures and then text is going to be value. Unwrap, or actually expect could not get HTTP captures. First, I need to check to see if it matches the regex. If not is, let's see, HTTP regex is match value return false. So before we even get to this point, we need to make sure that it actually matches. And now, now we should have 3 matches here. First is going to be the whole string. Second is going to be the number. And third is going to be the unit. So like let unit equal captures or HTTP caps dot get, not regex, HTTP caps dot get. And that's going to be 3, right? Because it's going to be whole string, number, and then unit. Unwrap, sure. Wait, let's actually see what they're doing here. Unwrap as string. And this is captures is returning a captures type captures is going to have a get method, which is going to return an option match. And then this has an as string. Okay. If unit, well, let's get the number as well. Let value, or maybe that's not a good, let measurement equal HTTP caps.get to unwrap as string parse unwrap. This is terrible. And then let's call this a U16. Okay. Now, if unit is CM, if measurement is greater than, or is less than 150, or measurement is greater than 193, return false. If unit is IN, if measurement is less than 59, measurement greater than 76, also return false. Okay. So let's see, whoops, I did not mean to do that. Let's see if this actually works. Great, so it's exactly what I expected, which is that something broke. Let's see, line 49, so probably here, right? Probably this kind of unwrapped it. So this is why I guess we don't just unwrap. So if we were to expect, let's say, could not get capture group 3. Right. That's okay. So I'm wondering why this isn't working. Because do we actually have capture groups? Yeah, we do. And then do we... Let's do like let's do this. But I doubt this will actually make it work. All right. So something with the way we're pulling our capture groups. I'm actually going to go to the docs and read a little bit more. Let's see, go back. So are there examples where we don't have a unit? And if so, why are they passing this? Let's look at our data. This is the wrong data. Okay. I wonder if it's an index. Yeah, it is. I think it is yeah, so it was an off by 1 error. There we go. So I was using capture group 3. We should have a maximum of 3 groups, but it is 0 indexed. So index 0 is going to be the entire string, which is like the classic off by 1 error. 1 is going to be the measurement, and 2 is going to be the unit. So if you didn't see it here, I ran my my application or my project, and it gives me an answer of 92. I have a good feeling about that answer, so let me just go ahead and put it in. That's not the right answer. Okay, so if you're stuck, make sure you're using the full input data. There are also some general tips on the About page. So before I go into writing tests or figuring out what I did wrong, I want to try one thing, which is that I want to make sure all of my regular expressions are kind of, they have like beginning and end string characters. I want to see if this actually changes my answer. It doesn't. Oh, I'm not. Hold on. I just realized I wiped out all of my part my part 2 or part 1 answers. Anyway, 92. Hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck here. So I don't really know what the reason is that this is not working. So if I were to use test data, like if I were to use this, I should get 4. So if I go here and paste my okay, so something is clearly wrong. Now I wonder which part. So I'm gonna see which passports are not valid. So these two are not considered to be valid, and I wonder why. Let's look at them. So eye color, so it's 164 centimeters, birth year 2000. On PID, ACL, HCL, and maybe I can just like add some logging. Actually see if these catch any of our, nope, wishful thinking. Ah, so I need to ignore CID. I forgot about that. I like how I added in my comment, but I was just like, whatever. This is ignore just means ignore it mentally, right? But no, I actually have to explicitly ignore it in my program. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? So I'm just gonna do nothing. and and now if I run this, I get 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of. Well, I'm gonna keep it just because who knows what's gonna happen, but I'm pretty sure that's it. And go back, restore my input data, and moment of truth. Run, print a bunch of stuff, and then you can't see it here. Let me resize my window. Right here, we have an answer of 167. So let's go try that. Yay, that was it. Awesome. Well, this was fun. I went a little bit longer than I expected to, but thanks for sticking with me. If you enjoyed the video, give me a follow. If you want to talk to me, I'm on Twitter quite a bit, so feel free to follow me on Twitter and reach out to me. Also, if you're interested in anything besides Advent of Code, I'm trying to figure out like what I want to stream after I'm done with this. So, give me ideas, and see you next time.